The Paula Show is on. The Paula Show. Come on, one and all. I extend an invitation to the Paula Show. Join in the conversation. Transforming behavior, recognizing our savior, overcoming hurdles, achieving dreams. Together we can succeed.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Paula Show. Gender-based violence affects both males and females. And today, ladies and gentlemen, is International Women's Day. Clap for the ladies. This program is dedicated to the millions of women who suffer gender violence abuse. Those who have political inclinations, but they are ostracized by our male colleagues. And what about the workplace ladies? You're more qualified than the males, but somehow he's earning a larger salary than you are. Tonight, it's about women's issues and how we may overcome those obstacles. Thank you for staying with us on the Paula Show. We'll be right back after this commercial break. Stay with us, please. Thank you for staying with us on the Paula Show. Remember to watch the Paula Show on Tuesday nights at 9 and Sundays there's a rebroadcast at 1 in the afternoon. The Paula Show inspires, entertains, and transforms behavior. Also remember to like me on Facebook, The Paula Show. Two brilliant ladies are with us tonight. Miss Famala Jacobs and Miss Sherry Ann Bradshaw. I know you as a former youth ambassador. Tell me your title and the gender affairs, please. It's a bit lengthy.
Sure. So I am the Acting Executive Director for the Directorate of Gender Affairs in Antigua and
Barbuda. You expected me to remember that? Is there an acronym for all this?
DOGA.
D-O-G-A.
Directorate of Gender Affairs.
Simple?
Yes.
And you said all that before?
Yes.
Okay, no problem. And you're an attorney at law? A mom?
Yeah, that's what they said, yeah.
And what else?
Nothing else. Just attorney at law and a mom. Simple me.
Yeah?
That's all, yeah.
And a beautiful lady.
Gorgeous.
All right, ladies. United Nations Population Fund concludes that gender-based violence undermines the health, dignity, security, and autonomy of its victims, yet it remains shrouded in a culture of silence. Is that the case in Antigua and Barbuda?
So I would say that that is definitely the situation in Antigua and Barbuda. Gender-based violence continues to be one of the major indicators of gender inequality within our societies. And as you said, as was identified by UNFPA, it definitely affects the health and well-being of not only the women who are affected, but also the families, the children. And society at large.
Miss?
It is indeed correct. I will concur with Famala when she says that. And to bring it into the perspective as it relates to the legal realm, that is more evident by virtue of the fact that the legislator has decided, hey, we need to have laws in place to deal with protection against violence, specifically as it relates to women, and that is in the form of the Domestic Violence Act.
And you might be wondering, why is it we're speaking only about ladies? It's because today's International Women's Day, and when it's International Men's Day, then I will speak mainly to violence against our men. The global prevalence of gender-based violence is staggering. Women are affected disproportionately. Does our local data show an increase in gender-based violence?
Well, I would first of all say that it is extremely difficult for us to determine whether or not gender-based violence is on the increase. And just to go back to the global data that you spoke about, there was a global study done by UN Women which basically said that one in 3 women and girl will or have been experienced violence. Even if the experience is not your own, you might be aware or close to someone who would have experienced violence. When that was done within the Caribbean region, we found that it was 1 in 4. So that is very staggering, and we understand too how prevalent it is. Although we haven't done any prevalence studies in Antigua and Barbuda, our administrative data continues to reveal that women are being affected in higher.
Why would you not undertake prevalence studies?
So we are definitely moving towards conducted prevalence studies within Antigua and Barbuda, but we also have to take into consideration the cost implication.
It's very expensive.
It's very expensive. It means that you will have to go from house to house, almost like a census,
Get some
to get
technicians
the
as
information from every household.
That's a second census.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
It is.
Okay, are there unreported gender-based violence issues in Antigua and Barbuda?
I believe that there are, because I mean, you have persons not wanting to report gender-based violence because of economic situations.
Well, clearly, if I'm not working, especially, and my partner is working, and I'm going to the police to talk about him beating me or, mistreating me in any way, suppose he decides he's not paying the rent and he's not buying food.
But why are you assuming that it is only based on a situation where it is the income earner who is the one causing the domestic violence? We have cases of women who are independent financially and can stand on their own, who are being beaten to a pulp by their husbands, who they have to financially support. Why? Perhaps because of cultural issues such as status. You could be married into a particular family and you don't want to cry shame on that particular family, or you as the woman think that it was a mistake, I can change him. I made him mad.
Sharon, how many times? Okay, it maybe once. Some people would say no time at all. But maybe once you might think, okay, it's an accident. But 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times.
And then the issue
this is a behavior now.
It's a behavior, but the issue becomes complicated when children then become involved, because you as the mother, you do not want to be castigated as the individual in the home or the family or the marriage that may be the cause as a result of the breakdown of that family.
Familiar?
Extremely familiar, and I would even say that there are probably more unreported cases than reported cases of gender-based violence in Antigua and Barbuda.
Ladies?
There are many reasons why a victim might decide not to report. I also want to point to our culture of silence, not just in Antigua, but across our Caribbean region even. And the culture that we normally have of what we would call victim blaming, looking at the victim and asking what she or him, in some instances, did to deserve what happened, what they were wearing, why they went down the road, why did they let the person in, questions like that.
Why did the young lady go to the gentleman's room at 3 in the morning?
So those types of things, but also we also need to remember that there is a cycle of abuse, right? Abuse happens along a cycle. So there might be the honeymoon stage after the actual incident, where the accused person or the perpetrator might say things like, I only did it because I love you. Or they might say, it's only because you did this why I had to punish you. So there is some degree.
Punish?
Yes. Yes. And so there is the tension building phase, there's the phase of the actual incident, there's the honeymoon phase. So at any point in time, a person might be along that cycle. And it is important for us to always understand that, as Sharon would have said, there are a number of reasons why persons might not report. And it's not for us to judge them. It's for us to ensure that we support them along the way.
But so we've determined that there are unreported cases in Antigua.
A lot.
I also want us to move away from the notion of trying to determine the profile of who a victim could be, because a victim could be just about anyone.
So a victim could be anyone within this room.
Anyone. A high
Anyone.
court judge, a teacher,
Yes.
a
A
nurse,
lawyer,
a lawyer, a
Shaz.
doctor, a pharmacist, a farmer, a vendor.
So there's this myth that abuse happens mainly among the poorer
Yes,
section of
that
society.
society.
that is a misnomer. Yes, that is a. I
because
can say that
well-to-do
100%.
people
Yes.
are being affected by
Yes.
gender-based
Yeah.
violence
Persons
as well.
who you least expect. Least expect.
On that note, we're going to end this segment. We'll be right back on the Paula Show. Tonight we're speaking about gender-based violence, and we are speaking mainly to females being on the receiving end. We'll be right back after this commercial break. Stay with us, please. Tonight on the Paula Show, we are speaking about gender-based violence. Sherry and Bradshaw is here, and Famala Jacobs is here as well. And I have a beautiful audience who's celebrating my birthday with me. Clap for yourselves. I am so happy that all you ladies have come to celebrate with me, and the gentlemen too. I haven't forgotten you guys. Okay, one gender-based violence advocate proposed that a national census should include questions about gender-based violence. What purpose would that serve, though?
I think a census could assist in us determining the levels at which it exists within the society, so some form of prevalence. I think the census could ask questions about if persons know of anyone who
Okay.
experience violence. And I think it could also ask questions about if persons know where to go for assistance, if they are
Okay.
in fact in need of any assistance.
So that the reporting can be more accurate.
Yes.
Let's speak a little bit about rape. Rape is the word for forced or coerced sex. It is when the woman hasn't had the opportunity to freely give consent, or she's unable to give consent.
You need to.
Unable to give consent.
You need to insert the penetration, because rape has to do with penetration. There are different
So if
types
you
of sexual offenses. There's serious indecency, which involves touching and fondling. There's indecency. There is rape.
So if there's no penetration,
There's no rape.
so males
It's
can be
serious
raped.
No.
Okay, let's stay with the females.
Not yet. Not under our laws.
Not under our
Yeah.
law. In this statement, I'm at the place where I'm thinking she's unable to give consent. She's unable to give consent. Why would you be unable to give consent?
Well, first of all, a minor cannot consent to
Or
sex.
age.
So
Okay,
age is
so
a
age
factor.
is a factor.
Someone who is intoxicated cannot
Okay.
consent to sex, or someone who is drugged cannot consent. Someone who is also
If you're mentally retarded, you cannot consent either, because you
What
do
about
not.
if you're restrained by ropes or something like that?
Well, if you're restrained by ropes, you'll have to go a little step further, because the restraint could be consensual.
No, we're talking about unable.
No. The restraint can be consensual.
Uh-huh.
It doesn't necessarily mean that the act leading thereafter
Okay.
is consensual.
So you consent to be roped up,
Of
but not
course.
anything else.
Maybe not.
and also someone who is under fear or intimidation or threat.
Coercion or
Coercion,
threat, yeah, or
those
duress.
types of things. So once it's forced, not willing, the person is being intimidated or very fearful, they're not in a position to consent under those circumstances.
So you're fondling and you're kissing. Is that semi-consent?
If you agree to be kissed and if you agree to be fondled, it's consent.
Just to be kissed
for
and
those
fondled?
activities.
For those
but not
activities.
for
But
sex,
if you
that's not what
if
you
you
want.
decide that I do not want to have sex with you, either it's oral, anal, or otherwise, and you do not consent, then an offense can be committed.
So let's
Oh,
put it this way.
I'm going to come to you, darling. but okay. So we're fondling and we're kissing, generally, after that, there's an expectation.
Once someone says no, the consent is withdrawn.
So even at the point of penetration.
Yes.
When
Once you say no, consent is withdrawn. That is why if you listen to rape cases, you will often hear the prosecutor ask the victim, at any point in time, did you say no? Once you say no, your consent to that specific act has been withdrawn.
But following penetration, if you say no,
At any point in time
throughout
when
the
you say no,
activity.
it's your consent is withdrawn.
Yes. So you can, at any point, even after you've started, you can withdraw consent. And also, even if you gave consent in one instance, it doesn't mean that at the next time the person would freely be able to have sexual intercourse with you if you do not wish to. So consent is given at
so
every...
there must always be consent.
There must always be
There
consent.
must always be consent.
It can be body language or it has to be verbal.
Well, now we're saying it has to be a definitive
It
yes.
has to be a
And
definitive
Sometimes
no.
Yes.
in the heat
Or
of the
no.
passion, you're not able to talk.
Well, you see, we also need to remember that it's also an agreement between individuals.
It's like a contract.
Yes.
Yes, it's an agreement, and in whatever form that person is comfortable as well to express that consent. But we're now saying, given what we've been seeing, that it should be an explicit yes. But
It can be in action. It can be in body language. But, you know, it's
That's
kind of...
subjective.
It is subjective, but you have to look at every individual case on its own facts. Because I might not be saying no, but I could be constantly pushing you off, pushing you off,
means
pushing you
I'm
off.
not
That means
receptive.
I'm not receptive. That means I am telling you in action, in body, in form, no,
Don't go any further.
don't go any further.
Tell us what we should be telling our young men.
I think what the message is, and very important, is for us to prioritize the whole issue of communication. Communicating with the individual is very important, even throughout the entire process. Even when you were given a yes at the beginning, checking in to see if the person is still comfortable and if the person is okay is very important.
Famala,
Definitely important.
at some point, you have gone beyond the point when you can talk. And to be constantly asking, are you okay?
You mean the man?
As Sharian said,
Females too?
it is, and I don't want us to also look at it in terms of persons that are absolutely out of control of
Right.
themselves, right? Because at the end of
It's
the
called
day,
passion, you know.
well, we can call it what we would like, but once it's not consensual, it's rape.
No. I'm with you on
Yes,
that.
yes,
I'm
yes.
with you on that. I have 4 boys, and I'm asking you, what should I tell them? Because I don't want a situation where he's saying, she said, it's okay, and she's saying that's not what I meant.
Look at
so
it
I
this
need
way.
the message for all our boys and for the audience that's watching.
Look at it this way. If it is a rape, men and or boys, well, I'm not even going to say boys, men, because you have to be a man. You have to be over a certain age. Men would know whether or not a woman is into them and would want to go that 9 yards. It is just that some men think that, hey, I've gone too far to turn back now. So what we need to tell our young men is to have respect other people's wishes, and it is not a situation where you're just jumping into it. Get to know the individual. Speak with them to see what it is that they like from what they don't like, because women will let you know when they want to go that length. They will let you know. Some faster than others, but they will let you know.
Can a woman cause herself to be raped?
No.
By the clothes she wears?
No.
By her
Absolutely not.
flirting?
No.
By her body language?
No.
You don't think sometimes
She can be a prostitute.
prostitutes can be raped?
If I say no, it's no.
But it's your job.
I'm not having that job at that time.
And it is also not your job to be raped. I think what we also need to
It's
remember...
not your, exactly, it's not your job to be raped.
No, and
No. I'm not being facetious here. I'm just thinking that because of the line of work.
No.
Okay.
what I would say is because of the line of work, what we would call sex workers are normally more vulnerable, even more vulnerable to those incidents. But nothing you do would ever put you in a situation to say that you deserve to be raped. And that was one of the things that we discussed earlier, which acts as a barrier why people do not report, because they are afraid of how society will judge
Blame
them
and shame.
and blame and shame them, which is why they do not wish to come forward
So even
in some
if you walk down the
instances.
street naked,
As you're born.
Yes.
nobody has the right.
No one has the right to rape you.
Still on rape, if someone is raped, should the police or 911 be the first point of contact?
Yes, the police should be the first point of contact. As a result of the Model Sexual Offences Court, there is a procedure that is set up just to deal with all sexual offences matter.
There is what we call a one-stop center in Antigua and Barbuda, which is basically a coordination of all of the various service providers within Antigua and Barbuda to respond to gender-based and sexual violence.
Like?
So the service providers will include the police, the district doctors, community advocates who would normally come out and comfort the victims and support them. We also have 911 advocates. We also have the court, which is also a part of the response that we would provide. Yes, we do have a number of NGOs, which includes like Women Against Rape, the family planning, Red Cross, depending on the type of
And they're all
issue.
trained?
They're all specially trained to provide services to our victims.
So when we call all these numbers and various persons, what then happens?
So we are all coordinated, and what would happen is we would activate what we call a sexual assault response team. Now there are a team of persons basically ready and available to provide assistance at any point throughout the night. So if there is a rape, let's say at 2 a.m. in the morning, and someone calls into the police, or they call into our hotline, or they call 911, the SART, as we call it, will be activated, and persons, the Sexual Assault Response Team.
Sexual Assault
Response Team will be activated, and all of the support persons will meet at the center within an hour to ensure that the victim receive all of the services right
from
away.
these coordinated groups. Let's say a lady is raped and she reports it to the police, to 911, and the coordination commences. And then she decides, I want to withdraw. I don't want to continue with this process. Is the police, can the police then charge the rapist even though the lady has decided to withdraw?
They can if they want to, but they would have serious issues prosecuting the matter. If you don't have a statement from the virtual complainant, and this is only for persons who are over the age of 16.
So
because once, if you're under 16, there really is not supposed to be an option.
So if you're under 16, clearly your parents would be involved.
There is not supposed to be an option.
If you're under 16,
your parents are involved,
and you call 911, would they automatically include your parents? Yes,
they have to. They have to, because you are a minor.
And if you're a minor and you decide that
you cannot decide it. You as a minor, you cannot decide that you want to withdraw it.
If you decide you want to withdraw it, what happens?
You cannot decide that. You do not have the right to.
So as long as a minor is raped, it has to go through the process.
It ought to.
It ought to.
It ought to.
Okay.
Because you are not. It is a crime against the state.
So it ought to.
It ought to go forward.
Fully.
Because the only thing that shows and proves that the offense has been committed, the production of the birth certificate of the child, and of course you would have to do the rape kit, and the matter is supposed to flow thereafter. It ought, no
Seamlessly
child
through the
ought
court.
to be able to
Okay.
discontinue a matter because you do not have the right to consent, hence you do not have the right to withdraw.
You see, that's why I have to love you
So-
tremendously. Clap for that. So Famala has been, like on pins and needles. Let's hear you, my
Yes,
darling.
because as it pertains to adults, we operate from a victim-centered approach.
Yeah.
And what that means is that, bearing in mind that when a rape occurs, as I stated earlier, it is basically the imbalance of power, taking power away from the individual. One of the things that we do with the services that we provide is we try to empower the victims throughout the entire process, which
Yes.
means that person would have the option, once you're an adult, to make a decision as to whether or not you would like to make a police
So you wouldn't say,
report.
come on, you have to make a report.
What we would do, based on the victim-centered approach, is we will provide all of the options available to the client.
And you wouldn't say
We
this
would
is the best option?
We will explain the benefits of making a police report, how important it is, but we will definitely support the final decision of the victim.
Oh.
And it is very important to do so. It is also important for us to remember the importance of supporting the victims along the way, because persons tend to withdraw when they do not feel comfortable, when they don't feel safe, when they feel as if the system might not protect them, if they go through the courts and so forth. So when we have all of the supportive mechanisms in place, it would strengthen a person's confidence to want to make a report
And it's
to the
unlikely
police.
that they will
It
withdraw.
is unlikely
Yes.
that they will withdraw.
But after the victim makes a report claiming that she has been raped, even though she withdraws from the process prematurely, the information is kept on file?
It's for data collection purposes,
Okay.
but you would not put in a database the name of the individual for confidential reasons.
Okay.
You put in what offense was alleged, either it being a rape, a serious indecency, or an assault. You log it just for the purposes of data collection, but you do not put a name to it.
So in years to come, and that person feels like activating that.
No. There is a time frame as it relates to some of the sexual offenses. There is no
okay.
limitation as it relates to rape, but some of the other offenses, they do have time frames. And more than likely, when an individual says that they want to withdraw from the process, it is most times a final decision,
Like
because for
permanent.
them to want to resuscitate it, it's a rehashing and a reliving of the moment all over again. So most times all they really want is guidance, counseling, and whatever resources that are available to them to perhaps help them get past that
Wouldn't it be
stage.
considered obstruction of justice if you withdraw?
No, obstruction of justice is if you intentionally make a report that is false and you cause the police to investigate a false
Knowing fully
allegation,
well.
knowing that it is a false report. That is obstruction.
If parties were living together, clearly she cannot return home. Do you have shelters?
So in Antigua and Barbuda, we do not have a shelter. We don't operate a shelter, but what we do is provide emergency accommodations on instances where persons absolutely cannot return home. So every client, we would meet with them, assess their situation, and if there is a need for us to put them in a secure location for up to 48 hours in some instances, we will do so.
What happens after 48 hours?
It's an entire case management
Yes.
process. We don't ever just let go the hands of our clients immediately after we would have
So
provided
even
the
after
intervention.
48 hours, you're still...
Even after
providing
we are
support.
still providing support. In some instances, persons might transition into family homes, into the extended family with friends, or they might travel. Depending on the nature of the situation, we will continue to provide support.
Are persons generally uncomfortable discussing their rape experience?
I would say that persons in the first instance, when they're reporting the crime and they're trying to look at the various options for support, will be a bit uncomfortable, simply because they're not sure about the support that they will receive. It might be a total stranger who they might be, dealing with in terms of the service provider.
Yes.
And so they might not necessarily be comfortable in the first instance, which is why we ensure that we brief all of our clients. We let them know what the options are. We sit down and explain what will happen if they choose each option. And we also let them know the importance for them to seek psychosocial support, or what we call counseling.
So what are some of the emotions?
So persons would normally be a bit withdrawn. They might choose to go for counseling service, and within the counseling service it might take at least 2 to 3 sessions for them to actually open up with the counselor. Or a person might be within the counseling service and might not be expressive verbally, but they might be expressive in writing, or they might be expressive using art. So it's really for the counselor.
Art.
Yeah.
So you sketch.
Yes, they might be comfortable
Even
drawing,
adults?
even adults.
I know I've seen on TV, like CSI and those detective movies that children would sketch, but adults as well.
There are various forms of therapy, and the counselor's role is to assess the client and to try to determine what is the best method for the client, which is why they would normally give them assignments to do, see how well they respond to certain assignments, see how well they respond to a writing activity if they're not talking up. So there are various techniques that a counselor might use.
And they don't have to pay for these services, so you do
No.
receive funding.
All of the services are free. The funding would be from the government, and of course there are donor agencies, both nationally from the private sector or internationally, who would support our work.
So the legal aids that are included in the coordination from start to end of a rape victim's account and experience, are they generally representing the rape victims only, like the prosecution?
The legal aid doesn't come into play in that section, because it's a crime against the state. It is dealt with by the Director of Public Prosecution's office. So it is the prosecutors who would more or less meet with the victims to discuss how the case will proceed from beginning to end. Defense counsel would only get involved at the stage of trial, defending the accused person. Yeah. But they're specially trained prosecutors under the
Yes, and
the
we've
regime.
also introduced, just to add to what Sharon said, a special victim support unit within the Royal Police Force of Antigua and Barbuda.
Inspector
Victim
Hope.
support unit.
A police special victim support unit.
Police Special Victim Support. And that's an acronym too.
Yes. So within the one-stop center that I spoke about earlier, we do have the police units located within the center on site for a person who would like to make a police report, for them to easily access that service. The prosecutors, the Crown prosecutors, work very closely with the Special Victims Police Unit to steer and guide the investigation to ensure that they're getting the necessary information to strengthen the
Do you become
prosecution.
emotionally involved when you're listening to an account? Do you find yourself, is it okay, first of all, to hug the person, cry with the person, touch? I can imagine what you're going through. Is that okay? Is that allowed?
So it depends on the circumstances. Based on the training, it is never about you, an advocate. So your emotion is not what is important within that case. And you are trained to manage your emotions and to really center the client in that situation. It is also very important for you not to be, within that situation, power was taken from the person. Yes. You don't want to be too huggy, coming into the person's personal space. If there is need for you to offer the person a hug, you would need to ask them, but we tend not to get very close to the client in that way unless they request that type of support. Yes, we do get emotional because we're human beings. I remember my first case in the center. Although I train advocates as to how to maintain professional boundaries with clients and so forth, I was the advocate assigned to the first case within the center, and it was extremely difficult for me to, although I knew exactly what needed to happen to support the client, at one point I had to go into the bathroom just to pull myself together. Because when you hear stories about women in their homes sleeping, and then, you know, someone coming in, intruding. It is really difficult for you to keep yourself together.
Thank you for staying with us on The Paula Show. Remember to watch The Paula Show on Tuesday nights at 9, and Sundays there's a rebroadcast at 1 in the afternoon. The Paula Show inspires, entertains, and transforms behavior. Like me on Facebook, The Paula Show. I am so happy that you're here with me tonight. Clap for yourselves. I mean, this is a beautiful audience. And the birthday party is coming up after this segment. 16 Days of Activism. How was that?
So the 16 Days of Activism is a global campaign that starts on the 25th of November, which is the day for the elimination of all forms of discrimination against women. And it ends on the 10th of December, which is International Human Rights Day.
It will be annual?
It is annual. It happens every year, and it's basically a campaign that is used to galvanize action worldwide to raise awareness about gender-based violence.
And it was successful in Antigua.
Yes.
So you're looking forward to do?
We are looking forward to it, and what I would say is that we have a lot of community groups coming out, even churches and so forth coming forward saying that they would like to host activities.
Do you need volunteers?
I definitely
make a pitch for them.
Persons who are interested in community mobilizing, in being an advocate, in helping us to spread the message and the word with young people, with men, with women across Antigua and Barbuda, you can contact us at the Directorate of Gender Affairs. We will provide training to you. We will come to your churches. We'll come to your communities, and we'll work along with you.
Are you going to clap on that to acknowledge that you're in agreement? You're in agreement, right? Very good. Tell us about that support and referral center. I understand that's one of your milestones thus far in your job.
Yeah, it is a major milestone for the Directorate of Gender Affairs and for the ministry in a whole, and for Antigua and Barbuda. It's the first of its kind in the Caribbean region.
Oh, we have another first. You need to clap for Antigua and Barbuda. All right.
And so, as I stated earlier, it coordinates all of the services. It's a very important mechanism for ensuring that victims receive the quality care and services that they deserve. We're actually supported and working with other countries in the Caribbean to help them to set up one-stop centers as well.
You mean you've done so well that you're traveling to train them?
Yes, we have been doing that.
I thought this was just an easy girl, but she's not. Woman power. You need to clap for her. Very good.
That's an extension of what Famila said. Now, as a result of the gender-based violence, Antigua has now been the pilot for the Model Sexual Offences Court. So that is the first court specifically dealing with all forms of sexual offenses.
So 1 second. We have the first in the support and referral center.
Yes.
And now we have the first for the sexual offense.
In the Eastern
So
Caribbean.
we're clapping for them all night long. Nice. Okay.
Yes. So it's all sexual offenses, not just for females, males as well. All
We're going to be
sexual
talking
offenses.
about the males in another program.
The aim of the Sexual Offences Court is to fast track all sexual offenses.
Because sometimes they take forever.
And that is what the court is enacted and is supposed to eliminate unnecessary delays. So all sexual offences matters are fast track from the magistrates court straight up to the high court. So it is anticipated that the time for a case to be heard should be limited to some, if not a year, 2 years, depending upon the offense. Because you have in situations where the victim is 13 and you have a 21-year-old giving evidence. How can a juror relate to a 21-year-old? The aim is you need to see the victim at the time or close proximity of age as possible as to when the incident happened.
And I would like to make the link between the Sexual Offences Court and the Support and Referral Center, because there is a very close link. It's actually one coordination. What happens is we have a testimony room within the Support and Referral Center as well. So vulnerable witnesses, particularly children, would be able to provide their evidence and testimony remotely from our center into the court. So now our vulnerable witnesses would
Without
know
them actually,
Yes.
well, remotely. So they don't
They
have to go to
don't-
court
they don't
anymore.
have to go to court anymore.
Oh,
So they
They
give
don't.
the evidence from a warm, client-centered, friendly environment,
Comfortable
environment. They would not have to face the accused person, and they will be supported.
when the children offer evidence, do they do it confidently enough that you can determine what occurred?
Well, what it is, what the sexual offense, one of the procedures that they actually trying to implement is to actually have the evidence sometimes pre-recorded so that children do not have to relive it all over
And try to
again
remember
and try to
details.
remember. And even if it's a matter of trying to remember, once you have a statement and you have a pre-recorded video, there is nothing wrong just simply jogging the child's memory because you would have taken down the statement at the time of the incident.
What are the laws that you would like to be improved to protect women from gender-based violence?
There can be improvement as it relates to how matters are reported, because you still have that issue of the hesitancy of victims wanting and feeling confident in going to report because they fear lack of confidentiality, or they fear that they more or less might be ridiculed or frowned upon, and even just leading them through, guiding them through the process, because the last thing you want a victim to feel is that they're re-victimized. You're asking them the same question at different points in time. It becomes annoying. It's very irritating because they always, at every single point in time you're asking them that question, have to relive it over and over and over again. And that can be a big turn off, because after they've
Might
gone
lead to
through,
withdrawal too.
and they can withdraw, and then fully well knowing that at the stage of trial they're going to have to give it
Yeah.
again. So the support mechanisms need to be strong. It needs to be strengthened, and sensitivity, and letting them know for a fact that it's confidential, because the perception is that it is not confidential.
This taping is done on International Women's Day. Closing comments to ladies in the audience who are watching and my ladies who are seated here.
I would like one and all to understand that gender-based violence is very much real, and it is most important for all parties to respect the other person's wishes and their rights not to be infringed upon. And I will end by saying, when I say no, I mean no, and no means no.
Okay, thank you. You said it many times tonight. It's one of the key messages that will resonate in our heads, right? Okay. Famala.
And just to add to Sharianne, yes, gender-based violence is very real in Antigua and Barbuda. It is not just about a stranger breaking into your home. It could happen from the very person that you're close to, your intimate partner, the persons that you trust with your children. And it is very important for us to mobilize ourselves as society to support each other, to speak out against it, to break the culture of silence that we have around discrimination, sexism, stereotyping, and all of these harmful practices. It is very important for us to also be armed with the information, because you might just be able to help someone by providing a number or by telling them where they could go to get assistance.
And when your neighbor is screaming and crying, and you know that it's sexual abuse and it's not them just fun and frolicking over there, call 911. Yes. Be an anonymous caller. Call 911, because should the person die, you're going to be very uncomfortable. That person's blood is going to be on your hand. We are our brother's keeper. We need to make sure that we reduce the effects of gender-based violence by looking out for each other. Thank you very much for staying with us on the Paula Show tonight. We appreciate your company. Good evening.
The Paula Show is on.